This GBP USD setup checked off every single box from the FTB strategy, as well as a beautiful monthly play. And if price plays out the way I expect, this could be a textbook execution. Let me walk you through the full setup from bias to trigger and what I'm waiting for. In today's breakdown, we're diving into a recent setup I've been watching closely on GBP USD. I'll show you everything from a higher time frame bias to the entry trigger risk setup and how I plan to manage my position. Whether you're trading intraday or swing setups, there's a lot to pull from this example, especially when it comes to preparation and scenario building before you pull the trigger. Let's jump into the chart so I can walk you through exactly what I'm seeing right now. So for this trade, I use my trading checklist based off structure, supply and demand, liquidity, order flow, premium versus discount, and then my entry model. So I go over to the higher time frame, weekly and daily, and then I take my entries on the 4-hour and 1-hour time frame. This is a trade here on GBP USD, a 4-hour short setup, trading towards these lows over here, and I will explain why my target is right there. So let's talk about structure here on the weekly time frame, and you can see that we're clearly bearish, so we could trade down lower. Then what I can see is that we need supply and demand, and currently we are inside this little imbalance candle over here, which is your supply zone. So we are inside the supply, we are bearish, so we could trade down lower on the weekly time frame. Looking at liquidity, we also just took liquidity from this high, so this could also mean that we could still get a reaction from that high. Looking at order flow, my order flow is bullish, right? As you can see, we are respecting those lows. We are currently respecting every single low, and we're just trading up higher. And as you can see, we're also breaking the highs. So my order flow is clearly bullish, but this is a weekly time frame, so we could still see a small move down lower before moving up higher. For example, we could still see a little move under this monthly open, which I will talk about on the 4-hour time frame. So on the weekly time frame, I basically checked off everything, but premium versus discount also needs to be checked off, and you take that from the swing high all the way until the swing low, and as you can see, we are inside premium prices. So quickly, how this works is you are bearish, and after you break structure, you want to see a pullback. And when do you know that pullback is over and you can start to trade towards the lows? That's when you are inside premium prices. So again, structure is bearish, we are inside supply, we took liquidity, our order flow is bullish, but this is a higher time frame, and we could still see a small move down lower before with the order flow moving up higher. And looking at premium versus discount, we're also inside premium. So let's go over to the daily time frame and let's see what we have over there. So looking at structure again, we are bullish, but what do we know? Like I said before, after a break of structure, we do expect to get a pullback. And to what point do we expect to get a pullback? Well, towards the discount prices now, because in this case we are bullish. So we still need to make a retracement in towards those 50% levels, those discount prices, before we could ultimately move up higher. Then looking at supply and demand, I know that we are inside this weekly supply, which is also this daily supply zone, which is this buy before the sell. So we are also currently inside this supply zone, which could mean that we could see a push down lower inside those premium or discount prices. Looking at liquidity, like we said, we took this weekly liquidity, but I also can see that we took liquidity above this high, which is perfectly aligned, because what could this do? Push price down lower to take liquidity at the lows, which is in line with that pullback that we're expecting towards those discount prices. Then we also have order flow. Well, the order flow on the daily is bullish, but like I said, we grab liquidity and we gotta have a pullback down lower. So if we now switch order flow on the 4-hour bearish, then this is still valid for me, because otherwise we might just miss the trade. But because we took liquidity above this high, I do see that we could already trade towards those discount prices if the 4-hour order flow also flips bearish. So that's basically the checklist for the daily, and in my opinion it is also clear that we could see this pullback happen to take liquidity at this low and tap in towards this refined demand zone as well as the discount prices. So that's what I'm waiting for. But when can I enter on this trade? Well, that's something that I need to see on the 4-hour. So on the 4-hour time frame, what can we see? Looking at structure again, we are bullish,
but we could, like I said, exactly the same as on the daily, trade towards those discount prices and get a pullback down lower. So that's still okay for me. Looking at supply and demand, as you can see, we created this supply zone, and we also know that we are inside that weekly and daily supply, which could ultimately push price down lower in towards those discount prices. Also, looking at liquidity, we just grabbed liquidity above this high. So what could this mean? That we could trade down lower. So over here, for example, why did I not take any short setup at this high? Because there was no liquidity that it took out. So these were just early sellers for me. We then swiped liquidity above that high, and then we could start to retrace down lower, because then we have checked off liquidity from our checklist. So now that we also have liquidity, we now need to look at order flow. So as you can see, we have been respecting the lows at all time, and we've been just trading up higher. But then over here, you can see we had this demand in control, then this demand, but then this demand was in control, but we broke down lower, and now we created a supply zone, which also switched the order flow bearish, and now we could start to trade down lower. So looking here at every single confluence on every single time frame that I use, this is a valid setup to trade all the way to all these open liquidity lows and these discount prices. So this looks perfect to me. Now, how am I going to enter on this trade? Well, after that we broke this order flow, we created a supply zone. Now, luckily for me, this was also a fractal break. Because how do I use fractals? Well, to see confirmation if we could start to trade down lower. Like I said on the daily time frame, we had to see if this liquidity was enough to push price down lower. So how do you confirm if it's enough liquidity to push price down lower? Well, with fractals. So we broke the fractal low, and now we could start to trade down lower in line with that fractal. So that was my confirmation that I could trade down lower. Now, how am I going to place my entry? So this was more on the 1 hour time frame, but it's still visible on the 4 hour. So as you can see, I also did not yet enter this trade, but I still have hopes for this trade next week because it's still a valid setup. And this high should be strong because it takes out liquidity above this high and then it breaks structure. So that's why my stop loss is above this high, really safe. Then I will target these liquidity lows over here, and my entry will be at this little supply zone. Now, what is a supply zone? Again, a buy before the sell. So this little supply zone, which is more clear on the 1 hour, is where I place my entry underneath, hoping for an entry at top of that supply and then trading down lower. Now, look at this monthly play as well. So currently the month, this is the first week of the month, but what have we seen this month and also previous week? We have been only trading up higher. So if you look at that weekly time frame, you see you just have 1 week and you do not have a week on the bottom. So that's still what I'm expecting here, to trade underneath that monthly level and underneath these lows. So I'm definitely expecting a retracement underneath these lows, but then we could also just continue down lower in towards those discount prices like I said. So that's also a beautiful play that you could expect as well, and which you can take into account when taking this trade. So looking here at the 1 hour, where exactly did I place my entry? So I do see that there is this open supply over here, and then you can see that we have an NFP high at this high. And what do we know with news highs? News highs are bad, guys. Most of the time, news highs or lows, they get taken out before the actual move happens. So you can see this news announcement pushed price down lower, but I'm looking for a swipe of the news announcement, a tapping towards this 1 hour supply, and then I would like to trade down lower. So what you could do is either wait for this swipe, then more confirmation on the 1 hour for a fractal break, and then you could also place your short entry here, stop loss here, trading down lower, target here. So that way you have a smaller trade and you will have a faster take profit or a faster stop loss. But in my opinion, I just like to take it easy. I know that we could reverse from this point, so my entry is at this point. For me, this is a really strong high, like I said, on the 4 hour, so my stop loss could be placed above this high, and I could target the lows because there's enough room. So I'm just keeping it simple. I'm just going to place my entry and I'm going to trade down lower for a 3.3 risk to reward. So let's see if this trade plays out next week. I wouldn't care if it hits stop loss or take profit. I just followed my plan and I don't care about the outcome.